In this video, we're going to learn how money is created through the fractional reserve banking system. Remember that when we define money, M1, for example, we include not just hard currency, but also the value of money that is held in checkable deposits, held in the bank. So we're going to now think about how adding new currency to the economy affects the money supply. We have an example here. Suppose you print up $1,000 in new currency and you deposit it in the bank. Suppose the reserve ratio at the bank is 10%, how much money will be created as a result? So what we have here is $1,000 in new deposits. Okay, we've created $1,000 in currency, and we want to think about how that affects the money supply through the fractional reserve banking system. So when you deposit that $1,000 in the bank, what does the bank do with it? They don't keep it in the back in a box with your name on it. They hold some of it in reserve, in this case 10%, and they loan the rest out to other people. In this case, that would be $900 in new loans. So suppose that Larry comes into the bank, he wants to buy a new car, takes out a loan for $900. You still have that $1,000 in your checking account. But now Larry also has $900. So far we've created, right, not just the original $1,000 in new currency, but also an additional $900 in new money through this fractional reserve banking system. So suppose Larry goes out and buys his new car and pays the guy $900. That person now has $900 in additional income, which they will likely either spend or put in the bank. Eventually, this $900 ends up being deposited back into the bank. The bank, again, will hold 10% of it and loan out the remainder to someone else. Okay, this process occurs again and again, creating much more than $1 in money for every dollar in currency that is deposited into the bank. All right, so this would be an infinite process by which new money would be created through the fractional reserve banking system. So let's just start to think how we would add up all the new money that's created by this new $1,000 in deposits. Okay. Well, we've got $1,000 in your checking account plus $900 plus $810 plus $729 and so on and so on and so on. We can write this more generically as the original amount deposited plus the amount of deposits times 1 minus the reserve ratio plus deposits times 1 minus the reserve ratio squared plus so on and so on and so on. And even more succinctly, we can write that as the summation from 0 to infinity of the amount of new deposits, times 1 minus the reserve ratio to the ith power. The amount of deposits can be taken out of that summation, and what we end up with is this, where of course the reserve ratio is the percentage of deposits held in reserve, so a number between 0 and 1. All right, now that all looks really terrifying, but the good news is that this reduces to something really simple, okay? This summation, okay, in its limit is 1 over the reserve ratio. We call this the money multiplier because if we take the number, the amount of new currency or the amount of new deposits and multiply it by 1 over the reserve ratio, we will get the amount of new money that is created. So this term here, 1 over the reserve ratio, is called the money multiplier. And I've written that out for you here in this box. All right. Everything you need to know so that if this kind of example was a little bit confusing to you, in future examples, you really only need to refer back, right, to what's going on here. But I wanted to show you where the money multiplier comes from so that you don't just take this as some arbitrary fraction that we pulled out of the air. All right, so let's do one more quick example to see how this would work. Okay, remember, our money multiplier is 1 over the reserve ratio, and change in money supply will be equal to the change in deposits times our money multiplier. All right, so in this example, somebody decides to burn some money. I don't know, it's weird. But here we're removing currency, right, from the market, right, instead of putting new currency into the market. So here we'll have a decrease in money supply as a result of this destruction of currency. All right, so your friend sets a $100 bill on fire. The reserve ratio is 5%. How much money is removed from the economy as a result of this action? More than $100, right? Because that $100 is not in the bank, it's not being loaned out to other people, so we're going to lose. Our change in the money supply will be equal to, right, not just that reduction in currency, but also, right, a reduction in the money supply, right, because every dollar in currency here is getting multiplied by 20 to create, every dollar in currency creates $20 in money through the fractional reserve banking system. So 20, that's your money multiplier. And in this example, then we've lost $2,000 in money in our economy just due to the destruction of that $100 bill. Sorry, $2,000. Did I say 20? $2,000. All right. Okay, good. So that's it for this video. We're going to use this idea of the money multiplier, right, as we go now to talk about monetary policy, the control of the money supply, and how the Fed controls money supply in our economy. All right, I'll see you in the next video.